Those who do not speak. Those who speak do not know. The words of Lao Tzu echo through centuries, and Nietzsche sharpened them into a darker blade. The strongest often win without uttering a single word. The painful truth is this: most people lose because they cannot stop talking. They spend their lives explaining, defending, persuading, believing that words will save them. Yet every extra word drains their strength. Every explanation leaks authority, and in the silence they avoid lies the very power they crave. From childhood, you were trained to fill every space with noise. Teachers demanded answers, parents demanded reasons, society demanded that you justify your existence. You learned to defend yourself with explanations. You learned to argue when accused, to persuade when doubted, to prove your worth with a flood of words. But what they never told you is that words once spent cannot be taken back. They scatter like coins on the floor, and the more you scatter, the poorer you become. The lie of endless words is that they give you control. The truth is that every sentence makes you smaller. The ones who speak least hold the room, while those who babble desperately claw for attention. Nietzsche warned of this trap. He wrote that silence is not emptiness, but mastery. To refrain from speaking when you could is a deeper strength than shouting to be heard. The weak rush to fill the void with chatter, but the strong endure the tension of silence. They are not performing for the crowd. They are not seeking applause. They have learned that restraint itself is a weapon. To hold back words is to hold the reins of power. Silence unsettles the insecure. It reveals who cannot sit still without filling the air, and in that discomfort, the silent one becomes untouchable. Picture it: a roaring crowd, voices tangled, each person fighting to be noticed, to be louder than the next, and then stillness. One figure stands unmoving in the shadows. No words, no rush, no need to prove. The crowd falters. The noise feels cheap. Their attention turns toward the one who does not speak, because silence cuts sharper than any speech. The predator does not roar before the strike. It waits, still and unseen, while the prey trembles in its own noise. The storm is not feared because it shouts, but because of the silence before it breaks. You must see the truth. The smartest people win without speaking, because silence commands respect that words can never buy. Noise makes you common. Silence makes you unforgettable. When you resist the urge to explain, you show strength. When you endure the discomfort of being quiet, you show power. When you let silence hang heavy in the room, you show dominance. The world is not ruled by those who argue the loudest, but by those who can sit still and let others drown in their own noise. Silence is strength. Restraint is power. Presence is louder than words. Man is the cruelest animal, Nietzsche once wrote. Cruel not only to others, but to himself, chained to illusions, enslaved by the desperate need to be seen and loved. You were taught to believe that if you kept speaking, explaining, and proving yourself, acceptance would follow, that if you filled the silence with words, someone would finally understand you, finally care. But this is a great illusion. What looks like comfort is a trap. What looks like love is only smoke. And the more you chase it, the weaker you become. The trap of validation. The endless hunger to be liked. You talk and talk, hoping your words will buy affection, hoping your stories will prove your worth. You soften your edges, laugh when you don't feel like laughing, explain when no explanation is needed. But the more you give, the more predictable you become. People stop listening because they already know you will explain yourself. They stop respecting you because they sense your need. And here lies the cruel truth. What you call connection is often submission. You are not winning love. You are selling your strength. Jung warned that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Until you do, you will keep speaking to hide the parts of yourself you fear, hoping others will cover them with approval. But approval never lasts. It slips through your fingers like sand, leaving you emptier than before. There is a false love of words. You think words draw people close, but they often push them away. Words are masks, Nietzsche said. They are tools to cover what is fragile, to pretend intimacy where none exists. Think of how often you have spoken not to reveal truth, but to control perception. You smile, say "I'm fine" when you are not. You share pieces of yourself, but only the ones you believe will be accepted. You flood the space with chatter so no one notices the silence underneath. But this closeness is false. It is performance. And like all performances, it ends. The audience leaves. The mask falls. And you are left wondering why no one truly sees you. Because they cannot. You never gave them silence deep enough to meet the real you. Look at the world today. On social media, people bleed words into the void, posting, oversharing, explaining themselves to strangers who scroll past without care. In friendships, you may find yourself bending, apologizing, over-talking just to keep peace, just to be liked. At work, you over-explain your decisions, thinking more words will earn trust, when in truth, the one who speaks less is often seen as the one in control. Everywhere you turn, the illusion persists that words equal influence, that noise equals power. But what do you see in reality? The quiet leader commands more than the loud one. The friend who listens earns more respect than the one who always speaks. The one who is unbothered by silence appears stronger than the one who drowns in chatter. The illusion must break here. Words may give you temporary comfort, but they cannot give you power. They may win you moments of approval, but never true influence. And if you keep chasing love through them, you will forever remain trapped in the performance, mistaking applause for connection, mistaking noise for worth. The world does not love your words. It only tests your silence. Till you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Jung's warning cuts deep here. You think you speak because you choose to. You think you explain, defend, and argue out of free will. But look closer. It is not a choice. It is the shadow inside you, your old wounds, your buried fears, pulling the strings. Every word you spill is not power, but proof of how badly you fear being unseen, unloved, forgotten. Silence terrifies you because in silence you feel invisible, and so you keep speaking, not to command respect, but to survive. The shadow of insecurity runs deeper than you realize. As a child, you may have been ignored, silenced, told your voice didn't matter. Maybe love was conditional. You had to perform, explain, or please to be accepted. That wound never healed. Now, as an adult, the wound chooses for you. In meetings, you talk too much because you fear being overlooked. In arguments, you explain endlessly because you fear being misunderstood. In relationships, you overshare, hoping someone will finally stay. Every word is a plea. Don't abandon me, see me, believe me, but the truth is harsh. Your need to be heard does not make you stronger. It makes you predictable. The more you speak, the less they listen, and the wound remains in control. Nietzsche understood this cruel dance. He said words are often masks, not truth. You use them to cover the fragility you cannot bear to reveal. Behind the chatter hides a trembling self, terrified that silence will expose it. And so the mask talks for you. You smile and speak confidently, but beneath the performance is a fracture. You argue not to win, but to keep the mask from slipping. You explain not to inform, but to hide the wound that whispers, "You are not enough," but the mask costs you dearly. Masks exhaust you, they protect you in the moment. but they starve your soul. You become trapped in endless talk, unable to face the silence that could actually heal you. Jung said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. Your chatter is not light, it is darkness dressed in noise. Imagine it now, a vast, crowded hall. Voices collide like thunder, each person shouting to be noticed, to prove they exist. And there, one child, small and trembling, screams louder than all the rest. No one listens. The louder the child cries, the more invisible they become. This is the wound within you. The wounded child is still screaming through your words. Every over-explanation, every desperate story, every attempt to be liked, is that child shouting in the crowd, hoping someone will finally turn their head, but no one does. Because desperation blinds and noise drowns itself. What the child needed was never more words. It was silence. Silence deep enough for someone to truly see. And so you must face the truth. Your wounds have been speaking for you. Your insecurity has been choosing for you. Your words have not been weapons. They have been cries for love. And until you confront the child within, until you meet the shadow, your voice will remain a mask. But when you dare to fall silent, when you can sit with the fear of being unseen, something shifts. Silence no longer feels like death. It feels like power, because then and only then, your words are no longer cries from the wound. They are commands from the self. I do not speak to be seen. I am seen because I can be silent. Man is something that shall be overcome. Nietzsche's words cut like a blade. But before you overcome, you collapse. Before you rise, you fall into silence, so heavy it feels like death. You spend years trying to hold yourself together with words, explanations, justifications, promises, but there comes a moment when they fail you. You stand in the middle of your life, and nothing you say matters anymore. The people you argued with stop listening. The ones you defended yourself to still doubt you. The words you thought could save you now lie shattered at your feet. And in that moment, you meet the breaking point. Every argument runs dry. Every explanation sounds hollow. You begin to hear yourself repeating the same sentences, the same stories, hoping this time they will land, this time they will change the outcome. But reality does not bend to your voice. You realize you cannot argue your way into love. You cannot explain your way into respect. You cannot talk your way into peace. The weight of all your words crashes down, and it is unbearable, like a building collapsing under its own bricks. Your defenses crumble. Silence rushes in, not as a choice, but as a force. And in that silence, you feel naked, stripped of the very thing you thought gave you strength. Then comes the loss of identity. Without the mask of words, you do not know who you are. For years, you defined yourself by what you could say. Your opinions, your defenses, your ability to convince others. But now those words are gone, and you are left staring into the mirror of your own silence. You feel exposed, fragmented, powerless. You try to reach for another story, another argument, but nothing comes. The mask has fallen, and behind it, the pieces of your identity scatter like broken glass. You ask yourself, who am I if I cannot speak? Who am I if no one hears me? And the terror of that question eats through your soul. Jung wrote that the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. Here you see why. To face yourself without the shield of words is to face the raw wound you have always hidden. Nietzsche knew this descent. He spent his final years in silence, body weakened, mind tormented, stripped of the stage his words once commanded. Illness and isolation forced him into confrontation with himself, and there, in the silence, he touched truths that words could never capture. His philosophy became darker, sharper, forged not in speeches but in solitude. He lived what most fear, that silence is not emptiness, but confrontation with the deepest self. And this is the point you reach too. When the noise dies, you are left alone with the shadow you tried to outrun. The silence you feared becomes the only voice left, and it speaks with brutal honesty. This collapse is not the end, but it feels like one. It feels like falling into nothingness, like being erased. Yet within this ruin, something stirs. When your words no longer control reality, you finally see reality for what it is. And though it shatters your old identity, it prepares you for something new. You cannot rebuild on lies. You cannot rise on the mask. Only silence can strip you clean enough to begin again. I fall apart, and in the silence of my ruin, I begin to see who I truly am. People don't really hear your words, they only hear themselves through your words. Jung's insight is merciless. All your life you believed that the more you spoke, the more others would love you. That if you explained, persuaded, entertained, and revealed enough, someone would finally give you the affection you longed for. But look back clearly. Did they ever truly love your words, or did they only tolerate them, waiting for their turn to respond, nodding while their minds wandered elsewhere? What you mistook for love was only a reaction. What you thought was intimacy was often indifference. Words are not love, they never were. Silence has a weight that words can never reach. Silence is presence, and presence is power. Think of the moments that changed you, not the endless chatter, but the quiet glances, the stillness before a choice, the pause that made you lean closer. Silence creates gravity. It draws people in, forces them to pay attention, makes them wonder what lies behind it. When you resist the urge to fill the air, you radiate control. Mystery, restraint, and confidence live in silence. Nietzsche once said, "The tree that would grow to heaven must send its roots to hell." Silence is the root. It is the unseen depth beneath the surface. It communicates strength, louder than any declaration, steadiness louder than any defense. In silence, you are untouchable. You see this truth in the world around you. The leader who speaks the least commands the most attention. Every word they release is heavy because it is rare. The friend who listens more than they talk becomes the one everyone trusts. The partner who can sit in silence with you feels more intimate than the one who fills the room with chatter. Even in work, even in love, it is not the flood of words that wins respect. It is the one who can stand still, who does not beg to be heard, who can hold silence like a sword. The reframe is liberating. It was never love of your words. It was tolerance at best, reaction at most. The world respects presence, not chatter. It bows to silence, not noise. And now you see that your power was never in what you said. It was always in what you withheld. I am not loved for my words. I am respected for my silence. Until you know your own darkness, you will never know your own light. Jung's words call you inward. For too long you have feared silence, treating it as emptiness, as proof that you do not matter. But the silence you avoid is not a void. It is a mirror. In that stillness you finally face yourself. And the first step to empowerment is to stop running from it. You must confront the fear of silence. Notice how quickly you try to fill it, reaching for your phone, forcing conversation, explaining when no one even asked. That restless urge is fear that if you stop talking, you will disappear. But the truth is the opposite. When you dare to sit in the silence, even for a moment, something awakens inside you. Strength grows not in the noise, but in the stillness you thought would break you. Picture yourself in a room full of people. One speaks constantly, nervously filling the air. Another sits calm, steady, saying nothing. Whose presence pulls you in? Whose silence unsettles you? It is always the one who does not need to speak. When you practice silence, you stop needing the world's approval and begin to draw on your own. To walk this path, you must create rituals of restraint. Do not think of silence as something passive. Treat it as discipline. Before you answer a question, pause. Feel the weight of that pause before you speak. In meetings, resist the urge to fill every gap. Let the silence hang and watch how others lean toward you. In arguments, refuse the impulse to explain endlessly. Speak less, but with weight. Practice being present without performance. When with friends, listen more than you speak. Let your silence carry you instead of your words dragging you. These small daily acts train your nervous system to stop panicking in silence. They shift your posture, your energy, your presence. You will notice that people begin to pay more attention, not less, because your words are no longer cries for love. They are chosen, sharpened, and rare. This is the empowerment your shadow has been waiting for. To no longer fear the quiet. To let silence become your companion, your shield, your strength. The more you integrate the shadow, the less you need to prove. You carry yourself differently. You command without sound. And in that moment, you realize what you once feared most was never your enemy. Silence was always the doorway to your power. I do not fear silence. I am strengthened by it. My shadow walks with me, and I am whole. Nothing has a stronger influence psychologically on their environment, and especially on their children, than the unlived life of the parent. Jung's warning is clear. Chaos repeats when peace is never chosen. But now you see it. Silence is not emptiness. Silence is peace, and peace is the highest form of strength. Noise burns out, anger collapses, words decay, but calm endures. Calm is the warrior's shield, the sovereign's crown, the unshakable ground beneath your feet. When the world rages, the one who holds silence wins. Calm is not a weakness. Calm is power. Think of the storm. Lightning shouts across the sky, thunder shakes the earth, but it always passes. Then comes the stillness, the steady ground, the quiet after chaos. That is where true life begins again. You are no longer the one who reacts to every word, who explains until your throat is dry, who begs to be seen. You are the one who holds stillness like a blade. You do not need to answer every challenge. You do not need to fight every battle. In silence, you carry a weight that noise can never touch. This is not a retreat. This is mastery. And when you begin to live this way, the path changes. In relationships, silence protects you from arguments that only drain. You stop chasing validation and let your presence speak instead. At work, you gain respect because you speak less. But when you do, it cuts deeper, carries further. With yourself, you feel a new self-respect. The quiet confidence of no longer needing to explain who you are. Peace becomes your atmosphere, and chaos cannot live where peace resides. This is the transformation Nietzsche and Jung both pointed toward, not to be louder, but to be freer, not to be everything to everyone, but to be whole within yourself. Now you stand at the threshold of choice. Chaos is familiar. Silence feels new. But peace is where your power waits. The one who can walk calmly through storms is the one who cannot be broken. The one who wins without words is the one who rules without chains. I choose silence over noise. I choose peace over chaos. In calmness, I am unshakable.